Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We are powered by CLNS Radio. On today's episode, we have Bryce Alford joining us from UCLA. He is one of the more interesting stories in college basketball to me, just because of all of the things that his dad obviously went through this summer, with UCLA fans being angry, and he has a very complicated relationship with the fan base at UCLA and with just college basketball in general. So I thought it would be interesting to have him on, as he's about a month and a half away potentially from ending his college career. Second, I have Ricky O'Donnell from over at SB Nation to chat about just our favorite NBA draft prospects. We didn't really, break down anyone in depth. We just talked about who we enjoy watching the most out of these draft prospects. A lot of the conversation centered on guys like Malik Monk, Miles Bridges, Robert Williams, players that mostly have crazy athleticism and are more questionable in terms of their long-term fit in the NBA. But I hope that you guys enjoy. And first, here comes Bryce. Hey, Bryce, how's it going?
Doing well. Living life out here in sunny LA. Finally, the rain stopped. Don't have class today. Living life. Not too bad.
Yeah, it's pretty unexpected to have this much rain, isn't it? Just like, is this the first time since you've been out here in your 4 years?
I think it's probably rained in the last 2 weeks more than it has in the whole 4 years combined. So it's been a little different.
I've been telling people on my podcast that I'm like not used to the rain like this, and it's just it's terrible. So kind of looking back on your career here, you have a month and a half left if things go right. So like, kind of been a whirlwind, I feel like. And how would you assess it, with just this little time left?
Yeah, it's hard to really look back on everything, being in the heart of the season and having so much going on and so much you get to focus on. It's really hard to really focus in on trying to look back at everything. I think I'll do that once I'm done here. Yeah. But it's something that's been a blast for me to be able to do it and play for my dad for 4 years and just be able to represent UCLA the way that I feel like I've represented it. It's been awesome, and hopefully I can just continue to do what I've done for 4 years and finish on the right note.
Yeah, and you got here kind of late too. I mean, you were obviously committed to New Mexico, and your dad ends up taking the job here. So what was that process like, just how quickly it all happened for you?
Yeah, it was a blur. I remember my dad shooting me a text and saying something about playing for UCLA, and then, I go up to him and not really knowing what he was talking about, and we have a short meeting with him, my brother, and I, and just kind of talk about the pros and cons, and he told me he got offered the job and what I wanted to do and all that kind of stuff. Then we met with our whole family, and shortly after that, a couple of days, Dan Guerrero came out and gave us his whole spiel about everything, and didn't get to take a visit here, didn't really have anything to look at or really know anything about it, but I knew what kind of program UCLA was, so it was something that for all of us it was a really hard thing to turn down, so we just kind of took the challenge head on, and now all of a sudden I'm almost done, so it feels like yesterday I just got here. It's been a blur.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, was there ever a thought process or like a consideration where you thought about not playing for your dad and staying at New Mexico, or kind of considering other options?
To be honest, there wasn't. My whole life I've been around his programs, whether it be at Missouri State or Iowa or New Mexico. I always felt like I was part of the team, even though I wasn't. I always hung out with the guys and ate team meal with them, and then my high school career I even played pickup with them in the off season and did workouts with them, so I knew what it was like to be a part of that team. It just felt like home, it just felt like I was where I was supposed to be, and I never really questioned that. And then when this opportunity came up, the only thing I really asked my dad and brother was, do you think I can play at that level? And they didn't hesitate, and they said absolutely. So I wanted to make sure it wasn't something that they were just, my dad wanted to just bring me along. It was something that they were confident in my ability to play, and they were.
Yeah, and I mean, based on your stats, I mean, if on Saturday you score 8 or 9 points, you're going to enter the top 10 in UCLA's all-time scoring history. I mean, that's kind of crazy, right? Like, you were thinking whether or not you could play at this level, and then now here we are 3.5 years later, you're in the top 10 of scoring all time. How crazy is that?
I don't know how to put words to that. I mean, I never imagined myself being in the top 10 of any category at UCLA, let alone in all-time points scored. So, to be surrounded by the names that I'll be surrounded by, it's something I'll look back in years to come and just really be able to cherish the opportunity that I had here and just all the success I had. And, there's been ups and downs. There's been times where I haven't played well, where I have played well. And, I've just been a guy who's always stayed confident, believed in my abilities and what God's given me, and just stayed to the course, and it's turned out pretty well.
So you've had kind of a weird relationship with UCLA fans. Like, some of them have ragged you over the years. Like, you hear all of the stuff, I'm sure, that goes into being a coach's son. You know what I mean? It's like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, I don't know that I've ever heard you like just full on like talk about it,
Yeah, it's something I don't really like to talk about. It's something, it's a weird subject because I feel like the fans that are at the games, that are true UCLA fans that come to the games and really invest into the program and see the hard work that I've put in for 4 years, those are the fans that really love me and really enjoy watching me play and like that I'm part of the program and really understand how hard I've worked, because none of it's been easy. It's been a grind for 4 years, to say the least, playing for my dad. So the people that have been around the program and just have been here and seen how much better I've gotten from my freshman year to now, those are the fans that I really cherish and I really listen to. I try to cancel out the people that haven't been here.
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. Like, in this era, like where you have social media like crazy, I mean, it's almost impossible to just cancel it out, right?
Yeah, as a 22-year-old kid, you're not going to not see everything. I mean, unless I were to delete all my social media and not be a normal kid, I'm going to see everything that's thrown my way. So you try to cancel it out as much as you can, but that's something that, having dealt with it for 4 years, I've learned how to handle it. I think my first couple of years, I took it as a challenge more than anything and, tried to prove people wrong. And then this last season, I've kind of just told myself, hey, let's not listen to any of it. If people hate me, people hate me. We can embrace that. But just play your game and not listen to anybody. And I think that's what's helped me the most.
Was there ever like a low point where like you saw it and like you just couldn't ignore it?
I think obviously last year with the record we had and the season we had, that was very tough. With everything that went on in that year, we had a lot of issues going on in that year, and obviously a lot of that was put on my shoulders, and I felt that pressure. Not only because of our record, but because my dad was the coach, and stuff happens in the off season where people are flying banners and all that stuff that happens, and that kind of hits me head on, because I have a part in that. It's not something that's that I take lightly, and I just a challenge I had to take on, and that was probably the lowest point, but it was also kind of a turning point for me, I think, and for my dad, just taking that and realizing the voices that matter and just really focusing on a new year.
Is it almost tougher too when it's a family member that you see getting just the like all kind of trash and vitriol that your dad did?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's one thing for it to be your coach, but then for it to be your dad as well, and somebody calling for your dad's job, somewhat because you didn't perform at the highest level that you could have, and your team didn't. So that hits home. That's something that really hit hard, and not so much that somebody was unhappy about that, but just the fact that we didn't perform the way that we knew we could. It wasn't so much that other people were saying stuff. It was just that we were unhappy with how we performed. So my whole family is as competitive as anybody, from my sister all the way up to my dad. We're as competitive as it gets. So when we don't perform well as a unit or as an individual, we're upset about it.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember asking you earlier this year, like you were shooting, I think, like 93%, or like you hadn't missed a free throw yet this year. And asked your dad, like, yeah, so what do you think of Bryce, like, hitting free throws? Like, it looks like he might surpass your high in a season. And he's like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, that happened for about a month, 2 months of the season, and that went down. And I hate that more than anything. That's the absolute worst. Missing a free throw is like it's a deadly sin in our household. So I haven't been able to surpass him in any of those categories, but over 80%, not too bad. I'll take it. But that 90% was always what I've been trying to get, and he'll never let me live that down.
Is it a little bit difficult to kind of be your father's son in a way? Because, I mean, he is who he is, like a Indiana legend and, you know, one of college basketball's greats. Like, you hear his name synonymous with the sport. So, like, what are the difficulties that come with growing up in that environment?
I think the biggest thing is getting out of his shadow and just trying to make a name for yourself. I think that was something that in high school I dealt with. You know, I was always known as, oh, hey, you're Coach Alford's son. Hey, you're the coach's kid, huh? And I'm always like, yeah, I am, but, like, I'm Bryce. I'm Bryce. I'm not just the coach's kid. So finally I had a great junior and senior season at La Cueva High School, and I started to make a name for myself at the local level in Albuquerque, but that was a very small market. And then you come to UCLA, and you really have to perform. So I think I've done as good of a job as I can do of making a name for myself, and hopefully everybody else sees that.
Let's talk about the team here. I mean, you guys are tremendous right now. I mean, one game out of the lead in the Pac-12. I think that everyone is really excited to watch you guys play every time. Like, how different is that from your first few years? I mean, you obviously, like, had solid teams, but nothing like this.
Yeah, there's a different buzz about it, you know. Obviously, our record speaks for itself, our resume speaks for itself, but I think just the way that we play, the excitement that we bring, the young guys that we've brought in obviously have had a huge part in that. But just the brand of basketball that we play, I think, is unlike any other team in the country, and people respond to that. You know, in LA, you have to have that. You can't be a team that's boring to watch in LA, whether you win games or not. You got to bring fans out. You got to be an exciting team to watch and a team that people can connect to. And I think that each individual on our team has done a great job of that. And it's something that we've recognized, because before every game we're like, oh man, this next game it's going to be live in here, you know, it's going to be crazy, and that's something that we haven't had.
Yeah, I was going to say the student section this year is wild. I mean, not to make fun of the UCLA fan base or anything, but Pauley Pavilion was a little quiet in the first 3 years you were here. I mean, this year, I remember that Michigan game where you guys made that run at the end. That place was as loud as I can remember it, and the Oregon game last week was as loud as I can remember it. That's, you know, a different feeling, and it has to be pretty cool, right?
Yeah, and it's night in, night out too. You know, it doesn't matter what game it is; it's sold out or almost sold out, and that's what college basketball is about. And I'm really proud of our team, the way that we've created that. You know, that's on us. We've created that ourselves, and the students here have been unbelievable this year. And you know, the leaders of the Den have done a great job of promoting the basketball team and just creating different ways to make the games fun. And then, you know, I think all it takes is for somebody to come watch us once, and then, you know, they're hooked. I think that's the brand of basketball that we play. Is we're exciting to watch, and regardless of who we're playing, we're going to put on a show.
So I've got to ask the Lonzo Ball question. I mean, how ridiculous is playing with Lonzo Ball? I mean, you know, he's just kind of a singular talent when you're on the floor with him, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's special. He's as good of a player as I've played with, and I've played with some incredible players in my career at UCLA. But he's as good as it gets. Potential number one pick. I've played against a lot of people, and I don't see anybody better than him coming out of the draft. Of just somebody that just wins. He finds a way regardless of what it is. If he's having an off shooting night, he'll go out and get 15 assists. He'll get 10, 12 rebounds. He just finds a way. And one of the biggest moments I remember is at Utah. You know, he gets 5 or 6 steals and breakaway dunks that really ignite us to win that game. And it's just little things like that just make you think, like, you know, come tournament time, this dude can, if we have an off night, this dude can win a game for us. You know, that's how special he is. And to have somebody like that passing me the ball, it makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah, you moved off ball this year, obviously, and you played a little bit off ball your freshman year, but the last 2 years you've essentially been the point guard. What do you like more?
I like being off ball. Obviously I like the ball being a hooper. I like the ball in my hands as much as I can, but this year I can't argue with what's happened. You know, this has been a blast for me. It's a lot less pressure on me to come bring the ball up against full court pressure and come off ball screens and then pass it and then run off ball screens, and then just it's been a blast. And to be able to play with a guy like Lonzo and then have Aaron develop the way that he's developed to make my job a lot easier and let me focus on just trying to find ways to get open shots and create plays off the ball has been a lot easier.
So the dream is, obviously you guys go on, win the Pac-12 tournament, win the NCAA tournament, but like, what does that image look like in your head? Like, do you kind of have a dream? Like, I know I've talked to you before about like how you used to imagine when you were a kid, like just kind of shooting game-winning shots at the end. Like, do you have an image of what a potential national championship would even look like to you?
Well, now that it's coming this close, and we are being talked about as a team that could do it, it's a little different. And I don't know if I really have a good image in my head of what it would be like. But
it's like one of those things that once you get it, like once it comes so close and attainable, like you kind of lose sight of it almost, right?
Right, exactly. And like you said, I've always dreamed about it. I've always dreamed about, being the guy with the ball with 3 seconds left. And, I had my mom count down on the driveway a million times when I was growing up and have me shoot a shot from the grass just 100 feet away and just try to make a game-winning shot. And I've always been a guy who's dreamt about it my whole life, being around the sport. So coming into March, it's something that's right around the corner, and we're looking forward to it. And especially it being my senior year, it's something that, we're going to try as hard as we can, and I think we got a legit shot.
And then next for you, I mean, I'm sure you're not really looking super far ahead, but I'm sure you're going to try and play professional and go as far as that goes, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. Obviously, like you said, I'm focusing on what's going on right now. We have a great chance at turning this year into a really special year, and with that comes individual honors. And so, if this team goes, I go as far as this team goes, and I know that. So, if this team can get to a Final Four, win a championship, I know that bodes really well for me as a professional and my chances at the NBA. And I've gotten some good feedback of some teams that might be interested, and just the way I've been playing and how my game translates to the next level. So I'm just going to keep on working and doing what I do and try to be as successful as possible.
And then last thing for you here, I mean, your dad's a coach. Corey seems like he's going that direction. Your brother, any interest in that side of it?
I think I'll let those two do that for now. Seeing what my dad goes through, what my brother's already going through, I don't know if I can do that yet. I don't know if I'm ready for all that. So hopefully I have a long professional career and I can play for a long time, so I don't have to worry about getting into coaching or anything like that. But I'd like to stay in basketball as long as possible.
Not so much ready for the fire Bryce Alford banners flying over whatever city you're in.
No, I don't need any banners for me yet. No, I'll let them handle that.
All right, Bryce, thanks so much. I really appreciate you coming on, and good luck the rest of the year.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, Ricky, how's it going?
I'm good, Sam. How are you?
I am excellent. My voice is a little bit shot. I feel like I've been talking too much due to podcasts, due to radio hits. Every single thing that's just going on has hit my voice at once, and I'm a little croaky.
It's all good, man. I think your knowledge will shine through on this podcast. It'll be okay.
So, we'll see about that. I have brought Ricky on. We want to talk about NBA draft prospects, but we're going to break them down in detail a little bit, obviously. But like more than that, we just want to talk about like our favorite draft prospects, like who we have the most fun watching and who we like just enjoy getting a chance to see whenever they're just in the zone, right? And I'll start with you, Ricky. Who's that guy for you that you just love to watch and you can't miss whenever he's on the court?
I got two, and I guess I'll throw them both at you at the same time. It's Malik Monk and Miles Bridges. Now, not even just from the sense of like the draft, because I think that both guys, they're certainly not perfect prospects. They'll both be taken in the lottery. Monk will for sure. Bridges likely will as well. Mm-hmm. But just in terms of like them putting on a show, I think Monk and Bridges are so much fun to watch. Monk for his just flamethrower 3-point shooting ability. I mean, he's taking 8 threes a game and making 42% of them. I believe he's averaging the most points per game of any player in the Calipari era. He's just been so much. We saw him get hot against North Carolina. He got hot. He gets hot all the time. But against Tennessee in the first half, I think he hit 3 or 4 threes. So Monk, I think, is just a joy to watch. And then Miles Bridges, you got to just stand in awe of his athleticism. That guy throws down harder and more often than any college player in terms of a freshman wing I can remember in a long time.
Yeah, it's with Bridges, at least we'll start there. It's like the power of the combination of power and just like being in the air so long. Like so few players kind of combine those two things, right?
Right.
Like the way that he dunks, and the one that's I wrote about him last week at Vice, like the one that's always vivid in my memory is that one in the Bahamas where he just like cocked it back from, it felt like 10 feet away and tomahawked on some, like, I don't even know, it was a little Bahamian kid. My eyes are just totally fixated on Bridges, like bringing the ball all the way back. And like this dunk, if it was on someone, like one of the greatest dunks in NBA history, if he could dunk on an NBA player in that setting.
Yeah, and what's great about Bridges is he has a dunk similar to that, like maybe 2 in every game. He's, either as a baseline cutter or as, a trailer in transition or something like that. That is not an anomaly in Miles Bridges' game. That's actually happening all the time.
Yeah, like he just like there's that one reverse in the first game against Arizona where it just looked easy, and there's the reverse again, like over a dude on Florida Gulf Coast, and then he made jumping from like 12 feet away and cocking it back against like Mississippi Valley State like look easy this year. It's just like wild how often he gets up and just throws down like he does.
And what's cool about it too is like you do not see dudes with that type of hang time weigh 230 pounds. Like that's where the power comes from, obviously, but he is a freight train when he gets going. Like it reminds me a little bit of this year before Jabari got hurt. Not saying that like they're similar players skill wise or whatever, but Jabari had just some like absolutely mammoth dunks where you're like, wow, for 250 pounds or whatever Jabari is, he was really getting a lot of hang time and a lot of lift on his dunks. And Bridges is sort of similar in that way, I think.
Yeah, like Bridges isn't quite as skilled as Jabari is. Like I feel like no one really except like LeBron that has that body type is that like skilled in terms of just footwork and shooting ability and everything. But like, you're right. It's the same kind of thing when Bridges goes up. I mean, you just expect a dunk to be powerful and to be on someone immediately. Like he is like kind of must watch TV for me. Like I wasn't real high on him coming into college. Like I kind of thought that the jump shot wasn't all that far along, and I still kind of believe that, even though the percentages are what they are. And I didn't think that he'd be able to dribble like he has been able to. He's still turnover prone, but he's better in that regard than I thought he'd be. He's just fun as shit to watch. Like, it's just the best way to put it.
He's the man. I saw him when he was uncommitted. He was at an AAU tournament here in Chicago. It was like the Nike Global Challenge or something. It was the event, and that was when he was uncommitted. Kentucky and Michigan State were both going after him. And I remember just seeing him in that setting. Like, he was the perfect AAU player, because obviously in the AAU game, it's always going up and down, and oftentimes he's matched up against someone who would have no chance of matching his physicality. Yeah. And he was like, tearing the rim down at this place. I was like, this kid's pretty good. And I did think, I tweeted at the beginning of the year that I thought his jump shot was better than most people believed. Obviously, it's been around 40%. He's taken nearly 5 attempts a game, so that's been solid. But to me, it's more like he's just not a playmaker. Like, he's not a guy who's going to get buckets off the dribble. He's not, like, going to get separation in terms of, like, a one-on-one creator. So he is sort of a weird fit in the NBA, but, to go back to your original point, he's super fun to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, Malik Monk, that's another guy I've written about at Vice. He is, you just have to watch him because at any point he can drop 20 points in 6 minutes.
Yeah, his shooting ability, and I know this is just like ridiculous to say, so take it with a grain of salt, but it is a little reminiscent of Curry to me in the sense where like he can just heat up so quickly, and when he does it, the ball is like barely touching the net. It's like you feel like the guy can't miss when he gets hot. Like we've seen him hit 8 threes against Carolina, he hit 7 threes against Michigan State in the Champions Classic, he hit 7 threes against Georgia a couple of weeks ago, I remember. And then some of these games, like against Tennessee, Kentucky's up by 30, so they pull him when he's got, when he's 4 for 7 from deep. He just heats up so quickly, and it's great to watch.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you even that, like, this season, it's pretty Curry reminiscent. He, as of when I wrote the Vice article on Malik Monk, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, he had the highest contested catch and shoot point per possession, like, so essentially like assisted field goal percentage of any player in the last decade outside of Bryce Alford this year, which is, funny given this podcast, but like, but it's crazy. Like if you take away Bryce, like it's the highest in the last decade. Like he it doesn't matter if someone's there. He gets great elevation. He's going to just have that true shooting form, and it's going to go. It's crazy.
All right, and to take it from like an NBA draft angle now, so like the way the league's gone, I guess if you want to like juxtapose Monk's skill set with De'Aaron Fox's skill set, like De'Aaron Fox rules. I love watching De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
I loved him in school when I was watching AAU. I think that kid's just a killer, but it's like everything De'Aaron Fox can do, Giannis can do, and he's 7 feet. And yeah, Giannis is like Giannis is a super outlier, obviously. Yeah. So many NBA teams have sort of a similar type of guy, like Jimmy Butler, for example, on the Bulls. It's like the ball needs to be in his hands, you know what I mean? Or like Harden or Ben Simmons or someone like that. So when I'm building a roster, like especially if you have one of those studs who needs the ball in his hands and whose jump shot is maybe a question mark, like, give me Monk all day as a guy who could potentially guard point guards, but can play off the ball on offense, stretch out defenses, and, just someone who can get hot in a hurry from three-point range.
See, I'm glad you brought up Fox, because Fox is one of my favorites just because of the insane quickness. I like guys that have, I like lefties generally. I don't know why. I just enjoy watching lefties play. He has the little floater game that I think is pretty. He can rise up for a dunk. Great passer. And I just wrote about this at Vice today. You're absolutely right. Getting a point guard that can't shoot really limits you in terms of how you can build a roster going forward. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I was trying to think of good places for De'Aaron Fox. I don't know if you have any in mind or if I'm just putting you on the spot here, but I would kind of like to see him on the Knicks. I think if you put him on the Knicks with Lee and Kristaps and Melo, especially if they move Kristaps to the 5, sometimes get some extra shooting on there. Dude, him in transition, running with some of those guys and having driving lanes opened up for him, I think that a situation like that, if not that exact one, would really be the best to maximize the skill set.
Yeah, and Dallas, I think, is another one if Dallas ends up in his range. If Dirk plays another few years, I mean, that is just the start of an awesome spacing team. Plus, you obviously have Wes Matthews, who can really shoot the ball. If Dorian Finney-Smith's going to be an NBA player, he really needs to learn to shoot the ball. So I like that fit a decent amount. New Orleans, I think, is a little bit tricky because they don't really have any other shooting outside of Davis. There are definitely fits out there that I think work for him. Just please, and I'm sorry I'm saying this because I know you love Fox, please don't put him in Chicago.
Oh, God, no way. I wouldn't want him in Chicago. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying is that, from a team like the Bulls' perspective, who has one of those guys who needs the ball, give me Monk over Fox all day just because, he's able to hit a jump shot and he would accentuate the strengths of your best player if that player is someone like Giannis, Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, James Harden, someone like that. One thing I wanted to say about them, though, is what's hilarious about the Fox-Monk backcourt, they're the exact same size. They are similarly mega athletes. I think that Monk's a little better as a jumper, Fox is a little better as a runner, but, both, A to A+ athletes, I would say. And yet their skill sets are so different. They couldn't be more different. Fox is an awesome defender, great penetrator off the dribble, really good playmaker, and then Monk is just a flame-throwing shooter who can also cram on anyone via dunking transition. It's kind of funny that they look so similar in a sense. They're their rough sketch, their physical attributes are so similar, yet their skill sets are totally different, polar opposites.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, it's pretty fun. And honestly, now I'm looking to see where I think Fox would be a good fit. I wouldn't want him in Boston. I wouldn't want him in Philly. I wouldn't want him in Phoenix. Milwaukee doesn't really make sense. Orlando certainly doesn't make sense. Minnesota just took a point guard last year. It gets tricky once you start looking at lottery teams and looking for, okay, who could realistically use a point guard that can't shoot?
Yeah, the Heat, the Pacers. I mean, I'm not positive the Fox is going to go in the lottery because of that jump shot. One of these guys is going to fall. Even I wouldn't be shocked if Monk fell out of the top 10. I think Draft Express has him at 9 right now. If he were to go 11 or something, I mean, that wouldn't shock me. I would give it maybe a 15% chance of happening. But it's just one of those things where guys are going to rise late in the process, and then these other players like Monk, like Fox, pretty much everyone, sort of the 6 through 10 range. They just have a flaw, no matter what it is, where someone's going to fall because of it. It seems like.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. just kind of looking around the rest of these elite prospects, I think that if we're having a fun conversation, like, we have to mention Lonzo Ball. Like, we're contractually obligated to do so, even though there are no contracts involved in this podcast. Like, he is insanely fun, and I can't express enough to listeners, like, you have to see this guy play to even fully appreciate it. Like, you have to see it in person. Like, just the effect that he has on the team in terms of, like, pushing them to the right spot, like sliding them down and telling everyone exactly where to go. Like, he understands exactly where everyone needs to be on the floor at all times in just this innate way. Oh, and he is this 6'6" crazy athlete who can pass and who can, shoot from 35 feet.
Yeah, Lonzo Ball is a basketball genius. I don't think that that's, like, crazy to say. He's just 2 steps ahead of everyone else on the floor in terms of, like, how he's processing the game. He's seeing plays before they develop, and he can see plays as they develop because of that height, as you mentioned, and that super elite passing ability. And he's someone who, like, you said you need to watch him, and that's true. I'm going to go a step further on that and say that you need to watch him over a prolonged period of time to really notice some of what makes him so special, because, like, the way he's rubbed off on UCLA this year has just been so remarkable. Like, that team has taken on an identity forged upon them by Lonzo Ball. And, of course you need the pieces around him. Moving Bryce Alford off the ball, our close mutual friend Bryce Alford, has been really beneficial for the team and for him too. And having, Holiday and those other guys, TJ Leaf, for sure, all that makes a big difference. But it's Lonzo in a sense. Like, Lonzo's imprint has been left on that team to such a significant degree. And, if you watch UCLA this year to UCLA last year, the difference is so noticeable.
Yeah, it really is. Like, they just enjoy playing with each other in a way that is different from, the way they played last year. And that is saying a lot, I think, in terms of just the impact that he has that, isn't necessarily accounted for in stats. Like, I understand that he's going to perform well based on statistical models also, but it's not all there. You know what I mean? Like, it really is the fact that just the way that he convinces everyone to, buy in and be unselfish and sell out for the team. It's really impressive. And, like, I've been around that team, not as much as, like, a beat writer this year by any stretch of the imagination, but I've been around them a pretty decent amount, and his effect is just crazy. Like, he is contagious in every single way.
There was one game earlier this year that Bill Walton was calling, and the whole offseason I was so jacked up for the first time Bill Walton got to call a Lonzo Ball game, and he did not let me down. He had the quote where it was something like, Lonzo Ball was a mix of Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, and Steve Nash. He doesn't care about anything but winning. And it's hilarious because it's Bill Walton, and he's throwing together guys from multiple positions and multiple eras. But in a sense, I, sort of get what he's saying. There's a hint of wisdom buried in the ridiculousness of a quote like that, in a sense, because I just think Lonzo Ball's a winning player. It sounds kind of silly to say, I guess, but, I don't know. I would want Lonzo Ball on my team, I guess, because I think that he does things that are in the box score and that are not in the box score that just helps your team get W's. Yeah, no, that I totally agree with.
We should mention Jason Tatum here, too. I mean, Tatum had a big game last night. He really seems to be coming on, in the way that everyone expected coming into the year. I have to tell you, he was one of my least favorite players to watch early in the year for, his first 14, 13 games. And then for the last, 4 or 5, he's just been tremendous. He's playing within Duke's team concept, but also going out and getting all of these players, or getting all of these buckets that, you expect of an elite scorer.
Yeah, he was forcing it early in the beginning of the season for sure. And I think when, Kennard, obviously Tatum was hurt at the beginning of the year. And then Kennard, people were expecting him to be, the 7th man on this team, and now he's, a player of the year candidate. So that kind of threw things out of whack. Grayson's episodes threw things out of whack. It was are these guys actually going to share the ball enough to be a good team? And I think that Tatum actually might have been the biggest problem when they hit that rough streak, lost to Virginia Tech, lost to Florida State and Louisville. But he's been great lately. And I think what you saw yesterday is, if he is a threat hitting the catch-and-shoot three-pointer, he's just going to be a really useful player in the NBA because he plays a premium position. He's really skilled in terms of his footwork. he's not a great athlete, but he's a pretty good athlete. And I just think that he's a guy who brings value with a high floor, more so than a high ceiling.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I think his ceiling is also relatively high. Like, a guy that's that skilled, if he can become a 40 or 37% three-point shooter, like, that's going to be, you know, a 6'8" guy who defends multiple positions, who can get his own shot and shoot from distance. Like, that is insanely valuable in today's NBA.
Yeah, he's not a great athlete, though. Like,
no.
My comparison for him, and basketball Twitter might think that this is like a big rip because this guy gets a lot of.
They're groupthinky. It's fine.
I was going to say Harrison Barnes is kind of my comp for Tatum, and I'm curious what you think about that. Like, athleticism-wise, they kind of remind me of each other. I think that Tatum had a dunk in the U19 tournament a year ago, like last summer. I don't know if you remember this, where he just like totally posterized the guy. Now, we haven't seen that much at Duke this year, but Barnes had some of those dunks early in his career before he had the worst dunk contest performance, or one of the worst dunk contest performances the world has ever seen. And, you know, just like their hype coming into college, I think is kind of similar. Neither of them are really going to, like, kill you off the dribble, though I guess, like, Tatum's better with his back to the basket. Obviously, the mid-post game is the first thing everyone talks about with Jason Tatum. But, like, Barnes, for as much flack as he catches, like, he's still a pretty good player. He's averaging 20 a game. Dude's got a max contract. He's going to have a really long career. So to me, like, that's sort of the type of player Tatum could be.
Yeah, I think that there are definitely similar aspects of their game, right? Like, they both at times struggle to read quickly what's happening around them, right? Like, they both can get a little caught to where they just go, oh shit, I have to chuck up this jumper now because I am just kind of stuck in mid-range and don't necessarily have the best feeling in terms of when to pass yet. Like, that happens occasionally, and that's fine.
Yeah.
What I will say is that I think Tatum has more fluid hips, which helps him create shots a little bit easier. Like, he can get to the rim just a little bit more fluidly. I don't think he has the vertical leap that Barnes does, and I think he could struggle maybe to finish around the rim, but I think he's going to get there easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Just like his body control in general is impressive.
Yeah, he's really, really fluid with his body. He knows exactly, like, where he is at all times, like where every limb is and where, like, all of, his body is going to go whenever he decides to take a leap. It's really impressive. I'm still relatively high on Tatum. Like, I think that he is probably a top 5 prospect in this draft, even though he struggled to start the year.
That's interesting. I wouldn't put him in the top 5, but I definitely have him in the top 10. I think went 7. I think, like, if you get a player like that around that pick in the draft, I think that's, like, pretty solid. And I mean, if we're talking about Jason Tatum being better than Harrison Barnes too, it's like, how? That's a pretty solid player, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you're getting a guy who's going to average 20 points a game who plays good defense. That's really valuable at 6'8", especially in today's NBA where wings are at a premium, you know? And that's another part of this too. Like, wings are at such a premium in today's NBA that I think I just kind of naturally, like, knock those guys up a notch, you know?
Oh, you have to, yeah. I mean, I think SMU this year, I don't know how much you caught them, but they're
amazing.
6'6" and 6'8". They're so interchangeable. But they got 4 starters shooting above 42% on 3. Ben Moore's the only guy who doesn't. He sort of plays like a little bit of a Draymond-ish role for them, where he's just like, he does a lot of the little things, steals, blocks, rebounds, cuts, stuff like that. I mean, that's probably the way the game's going. People have been saying it for years, but, like, we phased out centers. We might phase out the true point guard next, and we're going to have teams that look like SMU, I think, in the pro level pretty soon, where everyone's between 6'8" and 6'6", and they can all do everything on the floor. Unless you have one of these centers, like Embiid and Towns, you know?
This is kind of, like, hot takey, I guess, in a little way that I don't really like to be sometimes. But I think SMU, like, is a legitimate Final Four threat. I think they're so difficult to match up with. This is especially hot takey coming after a night where they just, like, were down 15 to Tulane at halftime, at home. But, like, that team is so difficult to match up with. Like, not only do they switch everything defensively, have a top 20 defense, and knock down threes, they're the 4th best offensive rebounding team in the country. Like, yeah,
and they're great defensive rebounding too.
They just create more possessions than you. They knock down shots and they defend the shit out of you. Like, that's a really, really good team.
And they got a stud in the front court in Ogilvy, who I've been a big fan of. I know the Draft Express guys wrote about him or did a video of him today. We've been on him for a while. We had a freelance piece on Ogilvy in the beginning of the season. And then Shake Milton's a stud, too. He's probably not a natural point guard, but I think he's been better as a distributor than I sort of anticipated coming into this year when he was taking over for Nick Moore. But just to have a 6'6" dude who can stroke like that, they're really good. I wrote about SMU yesterday, actually, and just when you think of everything that program's been through, from the NCAA tournament snub to losing out on Moutier's commitment to losing an NCAA tournament game on a Bryce Alford airball.
Yeah. This is the Bryce Alford podcast today, by the way.
And then all the stuff with, the Keith Frazier scandal and Larry Brown's suspension and Larry Brown retiring. They've been through so much just to get to this team. And I want to say it's worth the wait in a sense because I really like this team. I mean, them versus Cincinnati was just a great game. I like both those teams. I think both those teams could make a Sweet 16 run, no doubt about it. And that was just really fun to watch those two go at each other last week.
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher on SMU than I am on Cincinnati because I trust their offense a little bit more. And I know that, it's in vogue this year to say that, Cincinnati's offense, it's back. They're actually playing offense this year and doing it well. And I'm just I don't agree. I think that they have a lot of offensive talent with guys like Jacob Evans and, Kyle Washington's been pretty interesting this year. And Jerron Cumberland, I think, is going to be a really, really good player. Yeah. But I think they're a couple years away from being totally solvent offensively too,
Does Washington have another year of eligibility left after this one?
One more, yeah. He's a junior.
Cool, so they could be real good next year. I mean, I like Washington. Evans is solid. I agree with everything you just said there about Cincinnati. The fact that wasn't Troy Capane AAC Player of the Year last year, right?
And now I don't remember, but yeah.
That's the third best player on his own team.
Yeah.
Or with Gary Clark, he's the fourth best player.
I was going to say, Gary Clark is awesome too. And by the way, Gary Clark's a junior too, so he'll be back. This is a really good team. They're going to probably be a top 12 team next year heading into the season, and we'll see.
Cumberland's going to be a stud next year, I would guess.
Yeah, if you made me say right now who I think the preseason AAC Player of the Year is, if Ogilvy returns, it's probably Ogilvy, but second behind him is Jacob Evans for me.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt about it. I mean, that's the case probably this year, too. Forget next year.
Yeah. Right? No, that's a really good point.
Ogilvy is probably the front runner, and Evans is number 2.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and I'm glad that you kind of brought this up because I like the fact that SMU is just doing something very different right now, and I know that Villanova essentially just did what SMU did last year or did this year, did it last year, and Villanova's doing it this year as well and having incredible success with it. But it's just very different, and it's refreshing to see a really modern approach to the way the game is played, I guess.
Definitely.
The next prospect that I wanted to talk about is this Justin Patton, Robert Williams, John Collins, Zach Collins, big man group. Which one of those guys is your favorite? Because I kind of love all of them, but I do default to one of them.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Zach Collins might be my favorite, but the guy I want to talk about is Robert Williams.
Yes.
Just in the sense that, I don't know if people are familiar. I'm from Chicago, lived here all my life, and Robert Williams still has me defending Tyrus Thomas 10 years later, which is so funny. He kind of have a similar skill set.
Yeah.
And I threw it out there to my buddy, Scott Phillips, from NBC Sports the other day. And he's like, well, Tyrus flamed out. They have a similar skill set. I don't know about Robert Williams in the league. I'm like, bro, Tyrus could have been real good in this era of the NBA. The super mobile 5. I'm thinking, why am I defending Tyrus in 2017? What has happened to me? Anyways, I just like that skill set on Robert Williams. The bounce, the timing, he just has a sixth sense for getting blocks. He gets off the floor 3 times quicker than some guys get off the floor once.
Yeah.
I don't really know if he has the build to be a full-time 5, but to me that's the position you've got to play him in, especially the way the league's trending. And he's definitely not a finished product. He could be someone who takes until, this 3rd or 4th year of his rookie contract to really start making an impact. But I would still probably take that chance on him.
Yeah, he's the guy that is going to be the riser, in this draft, I think, whenever we look back on it. Yeah, I like him better than I like Marquise Chris, but that's, for me, not saying a lot because I'm not a huge Marquise Chris guy. But, Robert Williams, I mean, he's bouncier, I think, in terms of just like quickness off the floor.
He's way better.
I guess that Chris has a better shot, but I think Williams can shoot too, and he can play at like 5 more naturally. Like the positional allocation of Robert Williams' shooting, I trust it more than I trust Marquise Chris becoming like a consistent 35% 3-point shooter.
Okay.
Plus, you just take into account the defense. Like Robert Williams has natural defensive instincts that Marquise Chris doesn't. I'll leave it at that.
I agree.
So yeah, I like Robert Williams a little bit more than I like Marquise Chris. I'm a big Williams guy. I think that if anyone's going to push one of these like top 10 or 11 prospects out, it's going to be him, just because he's going to rise up boards. Especially like if he goes into a workout with, I'm trying to think of a team that like values workouts randomly. If he goes into a workout with, one of those teams that really just wants to put an emphasis on those, he's going to just shoot the lights out in front of one of those teams and get picked based on potential.
Yeah, do you think his J is good? I mean, I've seen him play a little bit this year. I haven't seen him shoot it with much range. So you do have faith in his J.
It's not there yet. Like, it's very much not there yet. He's taken, like, I think, maybe 15 threes, and he hasn't made any.
Right.
But he's made some mid-range shots. Like, the stroke looks pretty good, and he's 19. Like, I think that you only need a certain level of shooting out of him. Like, whenever we talk about De'Aaron Fox's three-point shooting, like, you need a high level of three-point shooting out of a lead guard, or, like, at least a consistent 30% or 32% if you're going off the dribble. With Williams, the bar is much lower. Like, you're just talking, like, a pick-and-pop guy who can hit, like, an 18-footer.
I mean, pop. He's a pick and roll. He's like a roller to the basket.
He's both though. I think he's going to be both, and that's how you get the crazy high ceiling out of him. Like if he's a guy that defenses have to respect both in terms of popping and rolling. I mean, that's Serge Ibaka,
Yeah, wow, that's high praise, but I do think maybe that's possible if the shooting comes around, because defensively, I do think he can be like that. I'm trying to think of another like pogo stick, shot blocking big man who's not like Whiteside, because Whiteside's much bigger than he is. I keep coming back to Tyrus because I have a problem, but who else can you think of as a comp?
Can we have an intervention for you real quick on Tyrus Thomas?
Good player.
What's the deal with Tyrus, Ricky? Come on, let's hear it out.
No, I'm just saying that like in the current league, I think that type of skill set is more valuable than it was in like 2006. You know what I mean?
So, like, are you thinking Tyrus would be like a star now? Like, or would he be a Tristan Thompson, maybe?
Oh, I don't know. Tristan Thompson's really good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have a high opinion of Tristan Thompson, but
so do I. Like, he's a starting center in the NBA, which is really valuable.
And just like when he plays the Warriors, he's awesome. So that's kind of all that matters in a sense. You know what I mean? Especially for the Cavs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. I'm trying to think like Biyombo doesn't fit with Robert Williams because Robert Williams can catch.
Biyombo's bad. That's somewhat interesting.
Like maybe Bebe, but Bebe's not as bouncy.
Right.
I don't know, man. It's really hard to find that comp. Like he's very, very different. Like to me, like if everything works out, it's Ibaka. Like we don't know if it'll work out, but like.
How about Capella?
Maybe it will.
Could he be similar to Capella?
I think he's more skilled than Capella. Like that again is probably like a really good case scenario because Capella is exceeded my expectations of him. But
awesome.
Yeah, like he's a starting NBA center for sure, and I did not think he would get there. So that's really valuable. But I think Robert Williams is a little bit more skilled.
Yeah,
he's not as big though. Like he's not as wide, and probably won't be as valuable defensively, even though Capella is still kind of hit or miss defensively.
I'm looking at his listing right now. I'm shocked that he's listed at 237. I would have guessed like 225.
Oh, if you stand next to Williams, he's a pretty big guy. Like he's more solid than he looks when he's like bouncing off the screen.
Like, is he kind of chubby, or is that like solid mass? I mean, he's 18 years old. So
yeah, I was gonna say it's solid mass, but it's not like professional mass. You know, Like he's going to have work to do on his body, and he will probably become just like a beast.
The only 18-year-old to ever have professional mass is Stanley Johnson, I think, in the last couple of years. He was like adult strong. Like people kept calling him
adult strong.
Like this guy's like as strong as a 35-year-old. He's 18.
Yes, he was very much adult strong. That is probably the funniest thing that like I have heard in terms of like a way to describe an 18-year-old.
240-pound two-guard, man.
Yes, he was.
You need some adult strength to get up that high.
Oh, there's the kid that's going to Wake Forest. Is it Chandri Brown? Is that right?
Yeah.
He's big kid. Like he's not like a fat kid or anything, but he's like built, man.
I haven't seen much of him, but
he's
he'll
like
be on my radar
he's
for
like
sure.
6'5", like I would bet 215, 220 as like
Sweet.
an 18-year-old. He's fun. He's a good slasher. He's kind of like in a similar boat. Do you have any under-the-radar favorites? Like guys that are way off? Like we haven't even talked about Markelle Fultz. Yeah, Markelle Fultz is fine. We enjoy Markelle Fultz, for sure. But like, is there someone off the radar that you really enjoy and want to like bring into this conversation?
Yeah, I'm just going to give you a few names. I like Donovan Mitchell. I think Donovan Mitchell's work with Quentin Snyder out, running a lot of the point guard duties for Louisville, was really impressive. To me, for Mitchell and for that entire Louisville team, it's like just jump shots. Like if they hit some threes, if Louisville hits threes, like they could potentially go on a Final Four run. If Mitchell hits his threes, he's going to be a really good NBA player, I think, for sure. And even like I like him better than Rozier. To me.
Awesome kid too. Like Donovan Mitchell is, and I tell like everyone this, and I say it on Twitter all the time. Like he's the kind of guy you want to bring into your organization too, like in a really good way.
Cool. I like Josh Hart because I think Josh Hart has a role in the league, and that's just as a wing stopper. Mm-hmm. And if you can get that in the 20s or maybe even in the 30s, I mean, I'll take Josh Hart on my team. I think Josh Hart makes a lot of winning plays. I think he carved a role early in his career as a wing stopper. And I think his jumper's not broke. I think his jumper's, like, okay, at least. So I would take that guy, especially, in the 20s or the 30s. And I like Devontae Graham. I think Devontae Graham doesn't get much attention because Frank Mason might be the player of the year and Josh Jackson's just a stud. But, man, Devontae Graham is really good. He's got the most complete skill set almost of anyone on that team because he takes nothing off the table. And that's why I like Devontae Graham so much. Like, he checks a lot of boxes without that one glaring hole, like Mason's size or, like, Jackson's shooting ability. It's like, Devontae Graham kind of just does everything.
Yeah, that's a really good, interesting player that I wonder if he comes out. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, your guess is as good as mine there, but with Mason and Jackson gone next year, he could potentially... I'll say this. Here's a take for you. He could potentially be a player of the year candidate next year if he comes back.
Oh, I think if he returns, he's 100% in the conversation. I don't even think it's a take. Like, I think it's fact that he will be like a first-team All-American. Preseason, at least.
Sure.
And plus, it'll be like with Malik Newman. That'll be kind of a fun combo.
Ooh, I forgot about Malik Newman. I loved Malik Newman in high school, man.
He's fun.
Oh, he could get hot in a hurry. I used to think that he had some like Ben Gordon juju going on in terms of like pulling up out of nowhere and hitting like 5 or 6 threes a game. It didn't really show much at Mississippi State. That was kind of just a messed up situation for him.
Yeah, it was.
The start. But it'll be fun to see him at Kansas for sure next year.
Yeah. So some of mine, I would be remiss if I didn't point out Luke Kennard here. I just love Luke Kennard. There's not really another way to put it.
Good. He's ridiculously good. He's definitely Duke's best player, I feel like.
For sure. Another guy, Jordan Bell. Like, Jordan Bell's another guy where if you just watch him in person, like, he's clearly the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year to me. Like, he is crazy good on that end.
Yeah.
Like, he's just so athletic. He's long. Like, he is awesome to watch.
Does he have a little Jordan Mickey in his game? Maybe not that level shot blocker, but...
But I think he moves better on the perimeter. Like, I think he's more, like, laterally quick.
Okay.
Oh, man. Justin Jackson. I really like Justin Jackson, too.
I'm turning the corner on Jackson. My problem with Jackson is he doesn't get any free throws. He's got the nice floater. The three's coming along. He's a pretty good player, Jackson, for sure. He's another guy in the 20s or 30s I think some team could take, but do you see him being able to create offense off the dribble, or does that not even really matter, given the role he's probably going to play? What do you think?
Well, I think that, like, he has the 2-bounce game, like where he's going to be able to attack a closeout for 2 bounces, and then once he gets there, like he has the floater to attack, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that he might be okay there. I think it's a good question, though.
What do you think of Kobe Simmons?
I'm not a fan.
Dude, he's been a lot better than I thought he was going to be.
That's definitely true. I will 100% say that.
When I saw him in the McDonald's game, I'm like, this dude is like a mega athlete. He's like from the shoulders down, like absolutely an NBA player, like a really good NBA player. But like from the shoulders up was sort of the question mark. Like, how's he going to think the game? Still a really young kid coming into that situation in Arizona. I didn't even think he'd be getting this much playing time, but then Arizona's so shorthanded.
Yeah,
he's been awesome. He like fills it up. That kid just gets buckets. And he gets them very quickly because no one can really match his combination of size and speed. His jumper's a little better than you think. And I discredited, I think, his feel for the game in a sense. Like, obviously it's not great, but it's not as lacking as I anticipated it would be coming into the season.
I think that is probably fair. Well, really, it's definitely fair. He's much better than I anticipated him being. I don't know what position he plays in the NBA today.
He's like a bench scorer in the sense that, like, he's like Nate Robinson with 6'6". You know, you just like put him in and let him go to work in a sense. I think that's kind of like the role he would carve out. It's just like a bench microwave scorer.
Yeah, I can see it. Like, if he ever figures out how to shoot, I mean, all bets are off. I mean, I just wrote about De'Aaron Fox today, like, people thinking that he's going to be able to shoot someday, so I can't say that Kobe Simmons won't do that. So, yeah, sure, fuck it. Kobe Simmons.
I mean, he's hitting 34% of his threes.
Yeah, it's not a disaster. Like, he's definitely a lot better than I anticipated. I think part of it is, like, I was so primed going into his college basketball career for him to not be good. Or, like, to be disappointing. I don't want to say not to be good.
Yeah.
But, like, he's much better than I thought, and I guess that I'm still kind of going off of preconceived notions. And I'm willing to, like, I'm pretty good at admitting when I think I'm wrong in that way.
Yeah, well, it's like in the stuff you were getting, too, during that, like, you know, that high school process, probably a lot of it just, like, naturally is going to be secondhand information. Like, the kid has a bad weekend at an Adidas AAU tournament. It's like, well, now Kentucky might not offer him, and all, you know, that's sort of how those stories unravel. But, like, given the situation at Arizona where they're so reliant on the freshmen, I mean, those 3 freshmen saved their ass this season. There's no doubt about it. And that wouldn't have happened unless all of them were, like, pretty solid contributors. So, to that extent, I think Simmons has been impressive.
Yeah, no, you're right. Is there someone that you want to point out that you're not a fan of? Or do you not want to do that?
Oh, I'll take some shots, but I don't really know who. I don't like Bam. I just don't see what Bam does for you in the NBA. It's like,
sure.
Can't shoot. He's not a shot blocker. It's kind of like, what does he do? I don't know.
I'm out on a lot of the big guys.
But you just named a bunch of them in that Robert Williams group. Like, who you out on? Are you out on John Collins? You out on Justin Patton?
I like those 3. Like, I'm not a huge guy on, like, Jared Allen, EK. Like, everyone's real excited about EK, and I don't really see it yet. Zach Collins is interesting to me. I think that he would probably go in the first round, I think, if it happened today.
Yeah. He'd be a monster if he comes back to school next year. Like, he'll probably generate some back end of the lottery hype if he comes back to school, I would guess.
He'll be an All-American if he returns next year. You can mark that one down, too.
Does he have some Cody Zeller in his game?
Who?
You think Collins has some Cody Zeller in his game? Is he a better perimeter player?
Yeah, I dig that comp. I think he might be a little bit better perimeter coming into the league, but Cody's developed a little bit as a defender. Like, Cody, the key would be, like, becoming as good defensively as Cody has, because that's, like, the key for him. Like, he's embraced all of that small stuff that, you know, you need someone to do in the power forward or center position. They play him a lot at the center now, but, like, if Zach Collins did that, that would be great. I feel like it's very difficult to predict that without knowing the kid, you know?
Sure, yeah.
I'm not real in on TJ Leaf.
Do you like Leiden?
Yes, because I buy the shot being truer than Leaf. Like, I think that he is a legit shooter.
Yeah, I think if you switch Tyler Leiden with TJ Leaf, just switch their teams, like, Tyler Leiden would be getting lottery hype probably. Like, he's really, really good, I think, and I would take him over Leaf.
And then the last guy I'll name he's been really, really good over the last month and really, really good at like kind of rehabbing after I think a slow start to the year. Thomas Bryant at Indiana. I don't really see it in the NBA for him.
What's funny is I have one buddy who's a huge NBA fan. He's a junior high teacher. He's not someone who like does basketball for his job, right? But he loves the NBA. Doesn't really follow the college game much. He came over the other day while I was watching Indiana, Michigan. He was asking me about Indiana, and I, noted that they should be better because Thomas Bryant came back and all that. And within 5 seconds of watching him, he goes, "Wow, his lateral quickness just looks a little limited." I'm like, well, it took you 5 seconds to deduce the problem with Thomas Bryant, so it must be pretty obvious. I mean, that's the issue with him, right? He's just like not as quick side to side as you really want out of that position.
Yeah, no, that's 100% my concern. And I mean, he shot it well. He has a crazy high motor, and he's a hard worker. I would absolutely take him in the second round. I just don't buy him like as a first rounder,
Yeah.
Well, Ricky, do you have anything else you want to talk about before I get out of here?
No, I'm good.
What have you published recently over at SB Nation?
I wrote about SMU this week. I did a big thing on them. I'm going to mention this. Is this podcast going up today or tomorrow? Because I'm going to try to write about Jonathan Motley for Friday ahead of that Kansas game. So I feel like if I mentioned it on the podcast, I'll be more motivated to try to get it done. So,
it will be up Thursday night going into Friday morning. So.
Okay, so I'm going to put some pressure on myself to try to get that done. And yeah, I did something on Ethan Happ last week. I did something on Justin Jackson last week as well. So a lot of college basketball stuff coming out of SB Nation now. Mike Rutherford's doing some great work for us as well. He wrote about the Tom Crean situation at Indiana this week. So keep it glued to SB Nation's college basketball coverage because we're heading into the part of the season where everyone loves college basketball.
Yeah, Ricky is one of my favorite people, probably like on the internet in general, because he's the person who started letting me write about college basketball at SB Nation. So I will be personally affronted if you don't follow Ricky O'Donnell on twitter.com and follow all of his work. He is a great dude, a great writer. He does an awesome job really leading their college basketball content along with Mike Rutherford. So please go check out his work. And do you want to give them your Twitter handle?
SBN_Ricky, RICKY, but I think, Sam, both you and I can agree that if anyone wants to unfollow both of us and just follow Robbie Calland, that's fine with us, right?
Yeah, Robbie's the best. I want to have Robbie on the pod soon. I really should. Robbie's great. Yeah. Like, as soon as I think there's enough time between when John Wick 2 came out and, like, being able to podcast about it so as, like, enough people will listen, that's when I'll have Robbie on.
Please do, because I saw that, but I'd like to hear Robbie's analysis.
It's the greatest movie ever.
It was pretty fun.
Yeah. Well, this has been the Game Theory Podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, everything that every app where you can get podcasts. I believe we're on right now. Thank you for supporting the show. We really appreciate the growth in listenership over the last little bit here since we've been with CLNS Radio, which is who we're powered by. So, again, thank you so much, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.